call this meeting of the Cleveland Heights University Heights Board of Education to order. Mr. Gaynor.
Mr. Coleman. Ms. Pepler.
Here.
Mr. Register.
Here.
Mr. Silverman.
Here.
Mr. Zucker.
Here.
Okay.
All right, I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. So tonight, we have the educational service team. You can see the majority of them in purple. You said not on purpose. But they're here to do a presentation tonight entitled The Past, Present, and Future of Cleveland Heights University Heights. And what I've asked them to do is to give us the facts of where we are and how we got there with our schools and our report card ratings, and then what we plan to do in the future so that we can change these the outcomes for our students. So you have before you a condensed version from the original PowerPoint that was sent with 55 slides. But the information, you see all this big team had so much information. I said we have to condense it, but we really wanted you to see where we are with our enrollment. We know some of our trends have gone down. We know that our report card data is not what we want, but we're so excited about where we're headed and this team that's going to help get us there. So I'll turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Gould, to start the presentation and lead the discussion.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity for the Educational Service Department to present to you the past, present, and future. We have the wonderful Educational Service team here along with me because one person cannot do this work alone. So what we're going to share is a little bit about the past. We're going to talk about embracing where we are presently, and then talk about how we plan to move forward in the future as we look at what has happened in our history and where we are. We all know that our schools provide challenging and engaging education to prepare all of our students to become responsible citizens and succeed in college and career. And that's truly what our mission statement says, and that's what the Educational Service Team is about. We look at curriculum, instruction, assessment, student services, technology, and all of the resources as far as federal monies are concerned, people, and time. So in order to look at the past, we want to look at a comprehensive review of the things that we're going to look at tonight. Understanding the past, assessing the present, and imagining the future. And not just imagining the future, but actually bringing that future into reality based on our goals that are set in our strategic plan. As we understand the past, we have to look at the current patterns and trends that have happened in our student enrollment and demographic. Here's our slide that's about our district enrollment. It includes 11 schools and the Belfair School through 12-13, the options program and SPED students at Garrity, and Noble. As you see the summary, there's a steady decrease over the last 5 years of 500 students, and that's an 8.4 decrease. Belfair School closed at the end of 12-13 with 74 students, and the percentage loss increase for the past 2 years has been 1.77% in 11-12, 0.63% in 12-13, 2.85% in 13-14, and 3.43% in 14-15. Here's our 5-year student enrollment by building, and we're just going to look at them in group first at Heights High, elementary, and the middle. Elementary enrollment increased from 42.2% to 43.3%. The elementary shows an increase until the 12-13 school year and then a steady loss following 2 years. A downward trend at the middle school, Heights High across the 5 years, and the highest percent of losses at the high school at a negative 12.5%. This is by elementary school. Boulevard, Garrity, and Oxford have the lowest enrollment across all 5 years. Garrity exhibits a sharp decrease since the 11-12 year with a 20% loss. Fairfax, Oxford, a steady decrease in the enrollment since the 12-13 school year. Fairfax with a 17% loss, Oxford with a 12% loss. Boulevard enrollment has increased by 11% since the 12-13 school year. Rocks has steadily increased with a slight dip in the 13-14, with a 17.5% increase in the 10-11 year. Noble shows a little change over the 5 years except for the dip in 13-14, with a return to the 12-13 figures the next year. Canterbury shows little change over the 5 years except for an increase in 13-14, with a return to the 12-13 figures the next year. This is just middle school. Rocks has the highest enrollment, Rocksmith has the highest enrollment across all 5 years. Rocksmith has showed steady losses from 10-11 through 13-14. And there was a closing of Wiley, and so that increased the enrollment at Monty by 49.3%, and Rocksmith increased by 32.4%. These are just trends by grade level, looking at kindergarten through 5th grade. K enrollment has decreased by 17% in the 11-12 school year, and grades K through 2 have the lowest enrollment. In grade 6, in 14-15 has the lowest enrollment across all 5 years and all grades. 12.3% lower than grade 6 in 10-11, with 54 students there, and 12.5% lower than grade 8 in 14-15, with 55 students. This is at the high school, their trends. In grade 9 has the highest enrollment across all 5 years. 31% of the total high school enrollment in 14-15. Grade 11 and 12 showed a dramatic loss with 26%, and grade 12 has increased by 10% since the 11-12 school year with 42 students. Percent minority has increased by less than half of a percentage point. Elementary has the lowest percentage of minorities across all 5 years, with 5.2 percentage points below the highest group in the middle school, and high school shows very little increase over the last 5 years. And the district is highlighted in the yellow. In the elementary, schools generally remain the same rank across all 5 years, with Rocks having the lowest percentage of minority to Oxford with the highest percentage of minorities. Garrity Rocks show the greatest change over 5 years, with Garrity increasing 8 percentage points and Rocks decreasing 7.3 percentage points. Middle schools also remain the same rank across all 5 years, with Rocksmith having the lowest to Monticello with the highest percentage minority. Rocksmith showed a steady decline until the closing of Wiley in 13-14. After Wiley closed, Monty's percentage of minority decreased by 2.5 percentage point, and Rocksmith increased by almost 7 percentage points. Any questions on the enrollment?
Well, I'm not sure that anyone can answer it, but I guess I'm wondering if anyone has even a ballpark for the, and Scott, you may know this one, for the expansion of the vouchers and specifically the Ed Choice vouchers over the last few years, and what impact that we might be able to attribute, what that impact is on enrollment decline.
I want to say this year we had about 300 Ed Choice, and,
Last year was 100 and something.
right, and maybe 110 to 150 would be our own students versus students that we probably never would have
Right.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right, the vast majority of the students are students that would not have intended to enroll.
Right, this year.
Right.
This
Right,
Right.
this year.
Right, and
Yeah.
certainly at the kindergarten grade.
Right.
Do you want general questions, or you want to wait to the end? I mean,
I think enrollment
Yeah,
enrollment
we're just doing
questions
well,
now.
I guess, I got a bunch of notes. The one thing would just be in general, because it goes in regard to a lot of the slides. If we can have more than just the last 4 years, because the last 4 years doesn't even encompass the housing, the recession, the housing and recession. The reason I say that is because if we look historically, we had massive declining enrollment in the 70s with the end of the baby boom. Recession hit, boom, and then that stabilized our enrollment patterns. The decline we're seeing on the fourth slide of 100 students per annum is we've been declining by 150 to 200 kids for the last 30 years, but there's variations in that. So I'm curious to see, if we see declining enrollment, then it stabilizes, and then it changes again. I'm curious to see what was the mitigating factor for those years. And so the only reason I say that just the last 4 years doesn't give us that longitudinal history. On the slide in regard to the elementary enrollment, do we have any reason why we think the kindergarten enrollment is now so much lower than previous years? Is there any idea at all why that is?
I think there's potentially some impact certainly of scholarship programs in terms of, the expansion of the ed choice has, I think, impacted. It's hard to know the full extent of it.
Right.
But it certainly has impacted the overall enrollment.
Okay.
You'll see the impact of a lot of our enrollment will hit at those beginning and exiting years. You'll see it in kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade,
Right.
and 9th grade.
The transition times.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see, grade level, the high school, again, this is the reason why I was asking in regard to the more longitudinal, is we see the current junior class right now is very, very small, but the senior class, the classes above and below, the seniors and then the sophomores are much larger. So that, I know sometimes we have classes that'll fluctuate, so that's why do we have any idea why that the juniors are so small compared to the two classes bracketing? Do we have any, is it just the way it is, or do we have any?
If you look at the trend for that junior class that you're talking about, if you start in 2011 and trace the 9th graders to their 10th grade year, you can see they're declining as they're going across their grade levels. You start out with 550 kids. In 10th grade, that would be your 417.
Okay.
Then in 11th grade, you see they're at 398, and then 12th grade, they would be at 396. Because you're following them through high school.
Well, I guess, I'm looking,
What page, Eric,
What
are you
page?
looking at?
I'm on page 10.
uh,
Is that one you're on?
page 3,
Slide 10.
slide, maybe it's, let's see.
Slide 10?
Yeah, slide 10. The grade 11 is 331 kids in the far right. So that would mean last year they were 361, and the previous year by school year, they were 361 and 529, which that actually goes to another question I was going to raise, which is actually on the same slide, is this enormous, when we look at our number of students per grade levels around, let's say 400 kids per grade level per building average, if we round up and be generous, I'll be like my father and just round everything up. But our 9th grade is huge. I remember a long time ago, when I was younger and thinner, when I was in the school board, we had a problem with the 9th grade where kids would basically had social promotion through the middle school, they hit the high school, boom. And I had thought that we had sort of implemented plans to address that. So I guess the question I would pose is, are we still seeing a big retention in the 9th grade?
Yes.
And if so, what is causing that? Because I thought we had nipped it in the bud as far as the social promotion component in the 90s. So now I'm coming back 15, 20 years later saying, hey, how come we still have this huge spike?
You will see a large incoming ninth grade class, but you will see a decrease because of lack of earning credits.
Okay.
So you will have them failing those major subjects that they need in order for graduation to take place. And those subjects usually being your English and your Algebra 1 courses.
Well,
But also to add to that, Eric, this is something that's happening nationally, not just in Cleveland Heights. And what we're finding is a lot of ninth graders, schools are having a difficult time keeping them engaged.
Okay.
And we have to find ways to make sure that that learning that's happening for ninth graders is something that's meaningful. And that's where you just have students that are coming and they're not engaged and they're choosing to come in the front door and go out the back door. So I think that's why Career Tech, especially in Ohio, is becoming a real true option for all kids and really getting kids engaged in some learning experience early on, introducing it to them early, and keep them engaged. The high school this year, we assessed the data to make sure that a number of ninth graders who were ninth and 10th graders who were credit deficient, that we had another option for them through the extension program. And with Jeff Johnson, Dr. Johnson, some others worked on a grant. And we have those students attending options in the afternoon, because we really saw that we had about 50 students in our district who were credit deficient but should have matriculated to the 11th and 12th grade. So we had to find a different alternative for those students because they were not engaged. So a couple things. One, we have to find better ways of engaging our students in every grade in every school. Two, we have to explore other options and let those options be okay. So online learning, if it's students going to Tri-C or early college, really explore all those options with students and their parents. And I think finding those things to engage students early and understanding that a traditional classroom may not work for them is the way that our district is approaching it. And I think nationwide, we see other schools are approaching it in that manner as well.
But we're no longer doing you can get 4 Ds and an F and still move to the next grade level. Because that was sort of, I think, the challenge we had in the 90s was ostensibly you could do that and go from grade level to grade level, and then you hit the ninth grade at the high school, and because we didn't want to do that anymore, suddenly they were stuck in the ninth grade.
I think it depends on what you get.
Yeah,
that
I don't
F
think
in.
that social promotion doesn't happen,
Okay.
to my knowledge, in a high
It's all
school.
about credits.
Because you
Right.
matriculate with credits.
Right.
Now, you may have some students that may call themselves a junior because they've been there 3 years.
Right.
But, you have to earn credits to matriculate through
I
the
think he
next
was
grade.
referring to social promotion from middle school.
From middle school,
yeah, 'cause-
yes.
'cause-
Well, a
Right.
lot of that happened because of students that are over age.
Right.
And, in middle school kids, there's a certain age that you don't want the students. But I think, again, working and meeting with parents and looking at other options for them, and that has worked. Some parents have decided, I think recently we had a parent that really challenged us, did not want the student to move on to high school.
Yeah.
Wanted that student to stay in middle school. But social promotion, I think, is something across the U.S. that we have to look at different. But we're not doing a lot, and I don't see evidence of that happening a lot in this
Yeah, I mean,
district.
'cause like I said, the concern I had was I remember spending a lot of time in it, and we were like, what, you gotta be kidding me that we had these, and again, at that time, and that sort of touches later on, the state was basically taking your ninth grade and your 12th grade, and they were saying you're only graduating 50% because they took a look at the size of your classes. So the same thing here is I'm looking at our size of our ninth grade versus our senior class
Yeah.
is almost double. So if someone was to look at just, even though the state may no longer calculate based on that, if someone was an outside observer to look at that, it portrays us in a very negative light, and it's also not doing anything good for our students, because if they're going through middle school, and then they get stuck at the ninth grade for a year or two as well, that's not,
Yeah,
Right.
agreed,
you know.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think those were my questions so far.
Okay.
I just have one,
Go ahead.
it's really more a comment. I think this is all good data to gather. I think, and I'm sure you are, you just need to be real cautious what you do to interpret it, because
none of this is normalized against the total number of students that could come to the schools. None of it is normalized against those that are likely to come to the schools, because we have a fairly large population of students that would choose, or families that would choose religious education. We're not competing with religious
Right.
education. So, given that we don't have that data to back this up with, it's just important to, I'll be interested to see how you're using this data, what the importance of the data is to what the programs are rolling out and all. So,
I think at some point we should be aware of the population trends as well. And I guess they still do the annual survey, don't they? So do they do it by age group? When the Census Bureau does they do it by age cohorts, don't they? So we could know some of that information.
Now we move into our state accountability results, and everyone knows that the report card has changed many times over the years. It has changed the number of tests, the number of school indicators, the way they do school designations. The new report card is set to be released in January of 2016, which report cards are always a year behind as far as data is concerned. And many of the criteria have not changed on the new report card that will be released. The only thing that I would bring attention to is there is a prepared for success measure on the new report card that looks at college admission tests, dual enrollment, industry credentials, which would be our CTE programs, honors diploma, advanced placement, AP, and international baccalaureate. That will not have a grade but will be on the new report card. And normally these things would be calculated from our EMIS, which is the management system for the state, College Board, ACT, IB, and Board of Regents, but now it just will be solely based on the district's EMIS reporting.
What's the honor, I think I understood everything you said, but what's the honors diploma?
The honors diploma is certain courses that are taken in the high school, like chemistry, physics. You have to take a certain sequence of them.
The honors classes?
Yes.
But what's an honors diploma? I've never heard that before.
It is awarded through the state based on,
If you take a certain number and get
Yes.
certain grades
Yes.
in them? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, no problem. So here is the Cleveland Heights report card history, and we're going back to 2003 to 2004 to kind of look and see where we were and how the indicators have changed, how the report card history has changed, and the indicators that we met, the school improvement statuses that we were in, when value added came into play, and what our school designations were at that time. Going back to 2003, you will see that those are ODE audit and site visit years. That means that the State Department actually paid a visit or did an audit in the Cleveland Heights, University Heights School District. During 2003, and I'll just skip around in some of these, there were 18 indicators, meaning that those are the number of tests that were actually given and the criteria on that particular report card. We missed AYP, which means that showing that yearly adequate progress amongst our students. We had a performance index of 78, and our school designation at that particular time was Academic Watch. In 2005, we hit the effective school designation, but we were also deemed at risk as far as our school improvement status, meaning that we did not meet our adequate yearly progress, so we were deemed at risk even though we had an effective rating at that particular time. Moving forward, as we go into from 2006 to 2012, you will see that we were not meeting our adequate yearly progress. Even though we may have made some of the indicators on the report cards, we were then still going into improvement year statuses, which is always based on the adequate yearly progress. And we were at a school designation of continuous improvement. And that was based on the old way the report card was calculated. Looking at the new portion of the report card, AYP, was changed until what we call annual measure objectives, and this replaced the AYP. And this is just a measure based on academic performance for specific groups of students, such as their racial and demographic backgrounds. In 2012, we had 7 out of the 24, and in 13-14, we had 7 out of the 24 indicators. Again, those indicators are based on the number of tests, attendance, graduation rates. Our indicator grade was an F, and our performance index was 72.6. We have been deemed at a DF, and this is at a moderate level of support from the state. That's what the DF means. And we made a value-added score of an A for 2 consecutive years. Now, the state is now coming out with a new award for if you make value-added scores of an A, known as the Momentum Award, meaning that you are showing some progress, because that value-added score is based on us showing growth with our students in grades 4 through 8, and now it will be moving to 9th grade as well.
Is the performance index roughly the same measure throughout the previous slide and this slide? The performance index?
Yes, because it is based on how we rate on the test, if we are in different levels: basic, limited, proficient, advanced, accelerated. So you get points based on that, and the number of points we get adds up to our performance index score.
If you could go to the previous slide, I'm just wondering, we had pretty, you know, some growth, or pretty
Because you're also
stable.
hitting more.
That's the word.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't do well on the language portion of the test.
That's okay.
Why do we have any idea why these last 2 years it dropped so significantly? Have we, I'm sure we dug into that, but I can't say that's registered with me before. The 12, 13, and 13, 14 going down by 15 points
On our performance index.
on the
scores.
performance
Index
index.
scores, yeah.
It is based on the number of students that we have had testing. As I look at the slide, we have had more students who are falling into our proficient and basic range, which gives us less points than students who fall in the advanced plus, advanced, and accelerated range. You get more points for students who meet above like 420 or
Right,
higher.
Yeah.
So it's just measuring,
And
So it's-
the
again, it goes to this, that's the value added, which we do well in. We're moving students from being, shall we say, deficient to improving their capability, that we get an A on. But in the minds of the state, it's great that you're doing well, you're improving the kids' performance, but they rate you on how many students are doing really, really well. So
Well, how many students are, compared to everybody, all of their peers, the value added is
Yeah.
just, did you make more than 1 year of growth in a year?
Yeah.
So if you
Yes.
come in 2 years behind and you end with more than, just a little less than a year behind, you do well on value added.
Correct.
on
So
this,
value added is a different measure
Okay.
than the actual
Right.
test that
Right.
we're talking about for OGT. You're talking about 2 different measures.
I guess the question I would pose in regard to this slide would be, the state test is really, it hasn't been, it's a moving target, it keeps changing, correct?
The passage rate, yes.
Well, no, what I mean
The
is.
score that they're giving
Well,
us,
well, not the score,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The goal score.
the goal
Yeah,
score,
exactly.
it's
So
changing.
the
Yeah.
question I would pose is that when, because we've got all the years lined up together, against one another, if the criteria and changes from, say, 06, 07 to 07, 08, and our scores go down, I guess, is there a way to convey whenever there was a change in criteria or methodology? Because I think, I'm not looking to make excuses because these numbers are not.
If you look
yeah.
if you look at this particular slide, there's a difference in testing just based on the number of indicators. We started out with 18.
Okay.
In 2004, we go to 23 indicators, meaning that we've picked up more tests.
Okay.
In 2005-06, we picked up more tests. In 2006-07, we picked up more tests. So every time we pick up more tests, we pick up a different goal indicator as well. We stay steady from 2006 to 2009. In 2010, we go down to 26 indicators, so we lose some of the achievement tests. So we stay to 26, and then when we go here, we're at 24.
Well, I guess where I'm going with that is that, to a degree, then over the span of 12 years of time, there's no ability to really chart out longitudinally because the criteria, everything keeps every 2 or 3 years, it's changing. So it's sort of, as soon as you may get some traction and you're looking good, then because there's different criteria, boom, suddenly it's like chutes and ladders. You go up a little bit, then you go back down again. So I guess to a degree, there's no, as much as it's great, it doesn't give us strong longitudinal, because even if we're making progress, because the criteria changes and modifies, suddenly what was good on the old test is just so-so on the new one.
Right.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you, it just changed on the 2016 test that's coming out.
Yeah.
There's more indicators on that one, too. I think any more questions on that particular piece? Okay. Now, if we take a look at early literacy, because that is one of the accountability measures, looking at our K through 3 literacy, which the calculation for this is to look at the number of students who are on track in a previous year compared to students who are not on track in the current year, and divided by the number of students that are not on track in the previous year. That's how that's calculated in order for us to get that K-3 measure. So what we're looking at is we're looking at each individual school that has K through 3, and we're looking at 41 students not on track and 13 students who were on track, giving Boulevard a 31.7, and so this is out of 41. So that's the way that measure is set up, out of 41. So they made a 31.7, and that gave them a grade of a D.
Those are, the 41 represent students.
Yes. And Canterbury, we're looking at 63 students on track, 39 students not on track, out of 63 points, because remember, we're calculating it by how many students were on track from the previous year, and that gives them 61.9%, giving them a C.
Well, wait, isn't it 63 the number of students and 39 the one who are?
It's the number of students from the previous year that are on
Okay.
track.
Okay.
By, yeah, and then you divide it by
okay,
that
okay.
number. So we're looking at 58 students on track, 13 not on track, giving us a 22.4%, and this is Fairfax. Garrity, 60 students on track, 14 not on track, giving us a 23.3%.
Well, I'm still confused then. Why would you get an F if the majority of your students are on track?
Because you are taking it from the number of students that are on track, seeing if they improved the next year, and then dividing it by the previous year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's very confusing, but okay.
it's a state calculation.
Well, that's why it's confusing then.
It's about growth.
Yes.
Okay.
But, and it's not really a year's growth, but they just want to see if they get on track for the, so if I start in kindergarten and I'm not on track, they want to see if I'm on track by the time I'm in first grade. And then I take my first grade and see if I'm on track by second, and then that calculates into my K-3 literacy component.
Is this,
Wait.
is this one of the ones that actually follows the student, meaning new students that come in this year are not included in that calculation? Okay.
It's just when they take the kindergarten, first, and second grade. They're
So if
looking
a
at
kid
that
comes
group.
in second, they're not included in this at third?
They won't be in this grade. They will still have to take the third grade test, but they start at kindergarten.
So what she's actually saying is Mrs. Gould has been a high school principal for quite a while, and so we'll step in on this one. So when you look at the data in regards to what goes on, you look at the number of students who are not on track in column A, which says 13. And then we look over, and by the time they test at the next grade level, you want to see how many of those students actually made on track. So over the course of every grade, K through 3, if you look down there, you'll see that there were 84 kids who are not on track. At the end of every year, we totaled up the columns and found out that 18 students were on track. So out of the 84 students who were not on track, 18 of them actually made on track over the course of those years. And so that's how we get our percentage. So if you see a building, you see 84, that's quite a few students who start off not on track to begin with. And of those 84 students, we got 18 on track over the course of those years. And that's why you see a 21.4, which is a F in that case. And so that's a building that we provide intense intervention at those primary grades in order to get those students on track. And they also design, is it called a, what is that, Dr. Reed, a RIMP?
Reading improvement plan.
Correct.
Right. So the goal of the K-3 measure is looking at when kindergarten students enter, are they prepared for kindergarten first? That's what the measures first. And then when they move to first grade, we're trying to see, is that student still on track? So the state looks at, if you said the student was on track in kindergarten, are they on track in first grade? Are they on track in second grade? And if they're on track in second grade, are they on track in third grade? And if they are on track in third grade, then we expect them to meet the third grade reading guarantee. That's what we're saying as a district when we say a student is on track. They also look at the number of students we say that are on track and if that declines in any way. So if, as a child matriculates from each grade level, does the child decline? So if I move from on track to off track a year, then what are we doing to provide interventions for that student? So the student has a reading improvement plan where teachers provide interventions for them for specific reading skills to make sure that they are back on track the following year. So it is following students from K to 3. If a majority of our students came in, I believe now the percentage, Karen, is at 40-something%, 60-something% of your kindergartners who come in on track, then you don't have this measure at all.
Right.
So some districts don't have the K-3 measure at all because their students come into kindergarten, the majority of them on track. And so, of course, that does not affect us. So we constantly watch the students in K-3, making sure that every year we're watching to make sure whoever falls, slips behind, that we are providing intense interventions to get that kid back on track. Mainly in third grade because there's a double count. So I'm counting you in third grade to see if you're on or off track, and then I'm also counting to see did you meet that third grade measure. So the kid is being counted twice for us. So it's following those kids from K to 3. All the way across.
Now, there was a slide, and there's a whole, I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff out, and it's all interconnected. There was a slide previously about student mobility rates. And I know historically we've always had a high student mobility rate. And the reason I mentioned that is because when there was a piece of data that said that of our graduating seniors, less than 40% start with us in kindergarten. And we've always had anecdotally that the longer you're in the system, the better you do on the test as well. The question I would pose, trying to round the corner, would then be, how do we compare to other school districts? Is the high transitory is the high transitory nature of some of our students impacting our scores? And then how do we compare to other systems that have a high transitory population, like a Lakewood or a Euclid, who have a lot of rental property and have a high, I would assume, a high transitory population? How do we compare to them? Or do they have the same issues we have?
The K-3 measure follows the student.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what district you come from, there's that label is on you whether you are on track and off track because
Gotcha.
everybody's taking the same state diagnostic.
Right. Okay.
So that follows the kid. So even if a kid comes in, if he's off track, our main thing is to find out where's the RIMP, was there a reading plan put in place for the student, and that's what we need to get from the other district, and we transfer that in to make sure we're following the interventions for that kid. But it follows the student no matter where they go.
Well, then the question, I guess, sort of continuing down, if we have a high transitory population, higher than say South Euclid or Beechwood, then how do we stack up against other communities who likewise would have a high 15% transitory rate, or new to the system, let's say? How do we compare to those systems? I guess, does anyone have that? What I'm looking for is, are our numbers comparable to other systems that have 10 or 15% of their kids new to the schools in a given year? are we doing better or worse than they are on state tests?
We don't have that data
Okay.
tonight, but we can
Okay.
look at that and
Yeah.
provide it.
'Cause,
provide some-
Is that a measure that the state is that a piece of
They
data?
compare us to similar districts
Districts,
on the
yeah.
report card.
But not on that
No.
measure?
No.
that-
Right,
no.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's always been an interesting one, and I don't know, do districts have to report that at all? How many new students do they have each year? I mean, we know we're very, very high.
Right, right.
That's not something that we
Yeah.
report.
Well, then the reason I'm asking is basically, you know.
So we can't compare unless they share.
Right.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that if somebody else has got, if you know, those great artists copy. If a system has a similar transitory population or you know high mobility rate, but their numbers are better than ours, what are they doing? That's why I'm sort of asking, because I'm looking for, I hate to say, I'm looking for a shortcut to juice the numbers.
It would be an interesting first ring conversation to
Yeah.
have,
That's-
because I imagine we're all relatively high, but
Right.
I bet some are much higher than others.
Yes, yeah. But I think what's important is what Octavia stated about that this plan follows the student.
Right.
Right.
And so the districts are being responsive to the plans. So we're making sure we put good plans in place, and those interventions in place. So wherever the student goes, we know that the students are going with a plan or they're coming with a plan. And so that's really important, because that third grade guarantee, we need to make sure that our students are reading by third grade. And it also goes to that other conversation about universal pre-K. And we've talked about that, how to make sure that our students, when they come to us, and if they come to us early, then we can make sure that in kindergarten, that there's a baseline, in first grade, et cetera. So we really need to push, and they're working on ed services, and Dr. Reed is leading that piece, and making sure that we have universal pre-K, and we're expanding pre-K options in 2 schools even next year.
And I will say, we're just like the clinic. We don't trust anybody's test data. So when students come in,
Right.
we reassess them. We make sure the RIMP is in alignment with what we feel a kid needs. So we really take that very seriously. That is monitored very heavily. The teachers take that very seriously, because we want all the students to be on track. And with saying that, then we're guaranteeing that they pass that third grade reading test.
Now, the current testing, this system methodology, as well as the testing, I'm not going to get into the acronyms, the sort of the students, I don't want to say passport, but their file, their permanent record, and now it's permanent, there actually is a permanent record. If it follows them from district to district, how long has this been in place, that these are the methodologies that we have to work with?
So we've had the K-3 measure for 3 years.
Okay. So it's still it's
Relatively
still
new,
relatively
yes.
fresh, okay.
Mhm.
I'm gonna kind of push back a little bit on what you said. Hearing you say, we take these things very seriously, we reassess, we push in, we're really working hard to address these issues, and seeing the results, what's not working, you know? I know that the performance groupings have been, we invested heavily in their performance groupings, and I know that there's some question as to whether those were effective in getting us the results that, we had expected, but when I hear you say we take these seriously, we work really individually and to push, extra support to the kids who need it, why are we still getting these results after 3 years?
Well, actually, you would look at 3 years that you really don't, this would be your upcoming third graders, would be your first third graders who've really had that push behind them.
Okay.
So, because it is relatively new, and I would say that people really weren't paying as close attention to kindergarten and first and second grade. And so, even though we all know the importance of early literacy, it just wasn't a laser focus on it. And so now you're looking at kindergarten being your new first grade. We expect kindergartners to be able to read now mid-year of kindergarten. There's a whole different shift in the way we look at what's going on with early learners. And you haven't had that focus before until that measure came out.
And so when you say this coming year, do you mean the test
current
this
third graders,
spring?
mhm.
Current third
And that
graders.
we'll hear about in another year?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So if next year we haven't seen movement compared to previous data, then that's going to be, so you get off the hook then. So next year, because the three of us are going to, next year, if the numbers haven't moved, then we got to say, hey, what's going on? Is
Well,
that,
I feel like one of the things we've done is we've looked at, as you know, I'm sure we're piloting reading programs in the district. So one of the programs we're looking at is Super Kids. We looked at a program that is specifically for kids in grades K through 2, because it's time to stop watering down a 5th grade curriculum to meet a kindergartner. So we tried to look at something that was research-based, that was developmentally appropriate for kids, and that has had success everywhere else it has been used. And so we're really looking at what we're really doing for kids that are in those K through 2 grade levels. Are we really making sure we're doing things that are developmentally appropriate to help them learn how to read so that they stay on track, and not that this year I'm reading and I'm doing really well and then next year I'll fall off. We want to build foundational skills that stick. And so I've been, for the last week and this week, we've had coaches in the district from this program. We've been in several kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms. I will say, I am super proud of the praise that has been given to the teachers here in the district. They have really bought into this program. They see the benefits for kids, and they are really sticking to the program and trying to make this work. So I'm feeling very good about that. I think we're going to see great results from it, first of all, because the teachers believe in the program, and they see how this is different from what they've been doing in the past, because it's really focused on kids in that age group. And so that has never happened before. We've never really focused on kids in early literacy and what those skills look like. We're changing the way we think about reading and how they develop as readers. And so I'm feeling like we're all growing together as learners, the teachers and the literacy department and the ed services team. And so I anticipate great results coming from this program, just based on the last week and a half of the feedback I've been getting from teachers and also from the coaches who have been here visiting in the district. So I anticipate a great change.
These results we won't see until, well, actually, we are a year and a half away from them, aren't we?
that was what I was going to ask. When would we anticipate that would
I feel
become
like
that?
we should see, I'm hoping to see a change at the end of the year, especially like with kindergarten. They took the DSA, and so they'll take it again at the end of the year. So we're going to look at that to see if we have more growth than we normally would have, even though I do understand that we're piloting and they're learning the program. So, you know, you do have that transition of the year. But just along with our first grade teachers, when they received the program, they did a 3-week review, which is a 3-week review of kindergarten. And our kindergartners were not ready for that. So it immediately opened their eyes to how we were not preparing students. And it immediately showed them the gap that we were having with our kindergarten students. So they're excited knowing that the kindergartners that will come up after this year will be prepared because they've gone through the program and they will have those skills. And so I'm anticipating a change in that kindergarten data this year. Even with it being new, even with teachers, because they have always done great things. I think now it's just going to be very focused on what we're doing with kids, and they should see the change, because our biggest proponent is they have bought in.
Did I mishear you? I thought you said we're piloting a number of programs, or is it
Yes,
just
for
Super
3
Kids everywhere?
No, we have Super Kids across the district in all first grade classrooms, because when you look at the program, like I said, it's a K-2 program. We learned that trying to implement that K-1 and 2 did a disservice to kids because they didn't have enough of the background of the program. And so it was better to implement K and 1. So we have first grade across the district, so that if we adopt this program, when they move into second grade, they will have already had the background, and it'll be better transition for the second grade teachers. The kindergarten class classes. We have it in 5 of the elementary schools, and then we had Canterbury and Roxelle was doing a different program. After a week with the program, the principal and the kindergarten teachers at Canterbury called and said, we want Super Kids. We're listening to our colleagues, we want this program, so we made sure they got the program. So Roxelle will be the only school not in kindergarten using Super Kids. So right now, across the district, in first grade we have it, and we just have one school not having it in kindergarten.
Thank you. I think we have pretty much explained all of these slides. This is a breakdown of the students that have been deemed gifted by minority. And now we will move into 6 through 12 accountability information.
Can you go back to that one? And Eric, you and I I think we had an exchange about this, or a conversation about this at one of the meetings a few months ago, and help me. Is the drop because we're no longer counting someone as, is it partially because we're no longer counting somebody as gifted unless they meet all 3 criteria? Remember how we people used to be in the gifted program if they met 1, 2, or 3?
Right, and that was actually we had more rigid criteria.
Right.
Before. And so, because you just had to be in the cognitive plus reading plus math.
Right.
And so there's been an effort to expand the assessment process and to change some of that criteria. And so I think that's where you see a growth in the total number between 13-14 and 14-15.
But you see a more significant drop from 12-13.
Right,
You know,
but
so
that was, right, there was
That's what
a,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Here's the,
Wait,
And remember
let
now,
Jeff-
14-15 is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
right, the criteria that had been put in place prior to the last couple of years was more rigid. And so I have to look at that number of 1,044 and see, because I think what they're counting there is individual areas of gifted identification.
So
So,
it might be triple counting an individual
Correct.
kid?
So you have like a reading, a
Yeah,
math.
so this,
Right.
but we should not be sharing this
Right,
in that
because-
way anymore.
right, 'cause
if
that's not
the
actually-
case, Because
it's-
that's really, those numbers are disturbing.
Right, it's gifted identification by
by section.
area
Yeah.
as opposed to a student.
Number of students.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, because
okay.
even then, if I'm,
Correct. So you have, so the criteria for the district has become less restrictive. And the testing process has become more inclusive as we've done MAP and, used MAP assessments and relied less on individual one-on-one assessments.
Okay, so that
So
far
we-
right column, Jeff, that
right.
725 represents total students?
It represents identification areas. So I'd have to
It's
look at.
still identification
Yeah,
areas.
yeah, so
Okay.
you'd, so what we can do is we can kind of tease that out for you a little bit.
Yeah.
And spell it out, because I know that our overall number of students identified has increased
That's
as,
not what this looks like.
right, as
Okay.
we've
and the
gone.
math
into-
doesn't,
Right.
I don't think the math makes sense either, because it's.
So we'll go back
well, you know
and
the math, right?
we will tease
Yeah.
this out some more and provide an update for you in your packets.
And I think that update, with this as an example, and I'm sorry, Ron, that, I'd ask that you give a couple of those updates at the next meeting, so that the
Sure.
public can
Let's
hear
see,
them,
yeah.
not that it's just shared in our packets, because I think this is misleading.
Yeah, the gifted identification takes place when?
Right, there's
What grade levels?
second grade,
Uh-huh.
and then there's also the, kind of throughout the year with the MAP assessment. So and Terra Nova is second and fifth grade, and then there's the MAP assessments that are occurring throughout the year.
if I'm a parent and I want my third grader to be tested, can they be tested?
Sure,
So we do have some
Absolutely.
off grades, if you will, that,
absolutely.
can we get a sense of that as well?
Yeah, in terms of how many kids are identified in different grade levels and when they became identified, sure, we can
Right.
provide that for you.
This just covers the indicator information that we've talked about, the number of indicators that we met based on the report card for the 2013-14 school year. Again, taking into account that the measures for the reading is 84.9, and the math measure, or the goal, as you would call it, is 80.5. And then at the high school, in 10th grade, the passage rate is 75% for 10th grade, and in 11th grade is 85%.
The color coding in the slide means
That means we passed.
so
We met the goal.
so in this, the higher, our best scores are at the top of the upper grade levels versus the lower grade levels.
Yeah.
Then? Okay.
But if you think about it in this way, if you look at some of the scores, when we're talking about getting to 84.9, there are several scores that are close to
Right.
that range, but we have to meet that score to get the indicator.
Go back. The 10th graders taking the OGT for writing got 80.8. Oh, but then it's 11th graders taking the
11th grade,
OGT,
right.
but it's the same test.
Yes,
I get it.
and they have to pass at 85% as opposed to 75%.
Oh, at
11th grade is up.
11th grade,
11th grade.
It's up 5%.
It goes
They-
up 5%.
they have to pass it or to meet the standard for
To meet-
the standard, not to pass it.
To meet the standard, it has to be at 85%.
I get it, but an individual can pass the OGT writing without hitting 85.
Correct, because I think
Yeah.
it is 75%.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks.
But the new report card, 10th grade, is going up to 80%.
Okay.
So we just passed it.
Here you have the gap closing, which is one of the measures also on the report card. And this just shows us our rating and kind of where we are with the different groups. And I know that's very hard for you to see, and they kind of change colors as they go across. The colors don't always match the same group of students. I know. So I'm going to try to summarize it for you. Based on the ethnic groups, our Caucasian students are outperforming all students in every category. The first column is reading, the second one is math, and the third is graduation rate. Our multiracial students are performing at a B in reading, and graduation rate is 86.7, with the exception of math that is at a C, which is at 73.4. Our African American students are performing at a C, 70.9 in reading and 75.8 for graduation, with the exception of mathematics of a grade of an F at 53.7. Our students with disabilities perform at an F in reading and math and a D for graduation rate, which was at 69.1. Our economically disadvantaged students received a grade of an F. Our Asian students perform at an F in reading and a D in math. And our ELL students received a grade of an F in reading and math. And if there's a subgroup that has less than 30 kids, there's no reporting. So that's why you won't have some reports for graduation rate in the ELL category or the Asian category, because we don't have 30 students or more.
So each category is mutually exclusive?
But the
Well, I
but the
mean,
colors,
You
Yeah,
could-
no, it's a good.
but the
good question.
colors don't stay the
Yeah.
same as they go across, so you have to really look at the bottom to figure out which color it is.
How do when we're looking at demographic cohort, the demographic cohort at neighboring or peer systems, how are our students performing compared to neighboring and peer districts? I guess, I mean, it's obviously, it's not in the PowerPoint, but I would be curious to know, you know, when we're breaking down by demographic groups, obviously, the state's doing that, how are we comparing to neighboring and comparable systems? I'd be very curious to see. Again, I'm looking for, you know, where we are outperforming or underperforming. If somebody is, if Asian students in Euclid are doing great, why aren't our students performing as well? You know, in the same way, if African-American students in math, if we're doing better than another system, that's great. We still got to get the numbers up. I'd be very curious to see, again, comparing to comparable and similar systems, where we're successful and where we're not.
Would you like to just see systems right around in this area?
But I would base,
First ring.
for inner ring suburbs, basically, that would be the, you know.
But this is the gap number.
Yes.
This isn't just the direct performance of each of the subgroups number.
Right.
This is the gap number.
Right.
So we would have to compare
They're
that. So take us once again, somebody, through the very troubling and confusing how our high number of disabled students impacts this, because I know it really has a negative impact. Help us understand that again.
Well, I'm going to start first with the graduation, and I don't want to paint it as a negative impact per se. I think it's a, you know, historically, nationally, students with disabilities perform lower than, you know, there's an achievement gap across the nation. It's an effort that, you know, districts across the nation are trying to address. Graduation for us is an interesting one, and I'll tell you why. Because we have a very strong partnership with CVEC, which is a organization that works with students when they achieve all of their graduation requirements, but still provides them with transitional programming. And so IEP teams make a determination that even though that student has met their graduation requirements, they would benefit from an additional year or two of educational transitional programming. And the district pays the tuition cost for that. Those students are counted against you in the graduation cohort. But we as a district value that contribution. So that number for us may be different than somebody else because we're making that investment. So we may take the ding on the report card, but the benefit, the outcome to the students and their families is worth that ding to a certain extent. So that's one indicator where going underneath the numbers a little bit, districts make decisions based on what's important, and that may be one that works counter to our report card value. In terms of the other areas, though, we have a significant amount of effort and work that's going into our reading and our math. Our math is, we're doing the same thing that the folks in curriculum and literacy are doing in terms of reviewing our curricular tools. We have to promote a higher expectation of achievement for our students with disabilities. There has been a long-standing practice before this report card came out of exempting students from the OGT graduation requirement across the state. If that practice, you know, there was a reason for that practice, but now that practice is counterintuitive to the report card and counterintuitive to measuring the student, the impact of the teacher. So we're having to reverse that to ensure that we continue to have that high expectation for kids all the way up till their senior year, as opposed to the decision being made earlier, which was a real product of a different report card system. So there are some things that culturally we have to do, and then there are some structural things that we have to do. Our achievement in reading is very close to the statewide indicator. Our special education program itself, you know, in terms of compliance, meets expectations, but from the state. So it's not been dinged as a program that needs assistance. But our achievement, particularly in the areas of math, is an area of concern and focus that we're working on. So,
But isn't there also an issue around how many students can be counted for the, that are disabled
Right, for
on the
the-
test?
That's for
There's a-
multiple disabilities.
right, there's a 1% cap, essentially, that's factored into the overall report card. And then we have a number of students who are assessed through alternative assessment.
And only and we can only,
Do 1%
only
of
some,
that.
You only
a
do
small
1%.
number can be.
Correct.
So 1%, and so that impacts the test
Right.
scores also. That's what I was trying to get
Right,
at.
so if you have a,
Multiple disability students make the 1%.
yeah, so if you have a significant population of students with multiple disabilities, or what we would call low incidence, more severe disabilities, those are going to be students that are taking the alternate assessment. 1% of those students can be exempted from, from your report card results, but the other ones are all counted as basic. So if you have a high number of kids that are
Right.
receiving those services, it could work against you in the report card, if that's answering your question more directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what are those numbers? What's the state average for percentage of students in a district with disabilities? Aren't we like
Right.
double?
Right, we're 18%, and so
Right.
the state average is around 12%.
Oh,
But we're
okay.
very,
So
we're very consistent, a little higher, a little lower than some of our first ring. Some of them are 19, some of them are
We're
16.
consistent with those?
Oh, we are,
Okay.
yeah, first rings are for the most part in that range of the mid-teens.
And
or
is
about
that just measured by whether they have an IEP?
That's measured by whether they've been identified with an evaluation, through an evaluation process, and have a current IEP in place.
And I'm sorry, but this is one that I'm just fascinated by. I know you and I have talked about this before, Jeff, that at least a few years ago, the city of Cleveland Heights, not the district, but the city of Cleveland Heights was the second highest percentage of children, the second highest number of children in the foster care
Foster
system.
care system, yes.
And I'm assuming that's still the case, just
Yes.
behind Cleveland, in the county, Cleveland Heights. And so those kids all come, almost 100% come with IEPs.
Vast
And I'm sure,
majority, yes.
okay.
Well, that's nothing new. I mean, that's why, that's.
Yeah, vast
that's not-
majority
that-
just
No,
takes
I
it.
know it's
Yeah.
nothing
No,
new,
no,
it's
my
just,
point
it's
is
just
it's-
Right.
it's just an issue, and that also leads to the mobility, it also contributes to the mobility rate. It's just so complicated.
It actually ties right into your mobility rate.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
But I'd rather focus on what you mentioned about CVAC.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's an important point to make. Uh, A lot of what we talk about, and we're forced into this, and people might criticize us for it, but we're forced to some degree to come up with the explanations for when scores don't look good, you want to
Right.
have an explanation for it.
Right.
But in the end, a lot of what we choose to do, that's the point. We choose to do this because it is what we feel is the right thing to do.
Right.
It's an expression of our values. So the CVAC, as you said, will take a hit, and I, as a board member, support that completely, that we should take that hit.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly, it's the right thing to do for those children.
Right.
So I think that it's probably, I think, Eric, you were bringing up, looking at neighboring districts and all. I think the most interesting thing is to look for programs that seem to be working, whether they're neighboring districts or somewhere else in the country or world, for that matter. Personally, I
Right.
don't care. But it's more, what are we going to do to help students get to the point they need to get to?
Right.
And if it means we take hits on exams, so be it. But I think it's more about us making the point that this is the value system that we're gonna put in place.
Right.
Well, the reason I'm asking, hey, what are our neighbors in our region doing is, because I'm trying to, who's doing something that's working, and then when in doubt, knock it off. If they're doing something, I'm looking,
And I understood that, I
Yeah.
think the region's great, but I think that there are
Well,
other
that's-
areas around the world that
I'm
maybe
cool
are
with
doing
that,
even
too.
better. So let's not, be limited to that.
And we kind of talked a little bit about this slide as well. This goes back to Mr. Silverman's point about the cohort group, because they do graduation rate based on the ninth graders that come in and how many of those matriculate out to graduate. And so,
that's still one of the things that, I view it from the issue of someone who drops out versus we lose track of them. So I guess that I still, the question ends up being if they leave us and they go somewhere else,
Yeah,
and we don't know we can't figure out where they went,
Correct.
that still counts against us.
Yes.
Which really
Because
sort of,
because
sort
they
of hurts
have
me.
they have a number that is attached to them
Right.
through our EMIS reporting, so it doesn't matter if they go to our online program, as long as they graduate, then it counts in that 4 or 5 year number.
Well, I guess if it's like we have a low jack on somebody, if they leave, I guess, if they leave, I get, well, actually, I mean, that's a good analogy.
The state does.
Okay, if they leave the state, do they,
Right.
yeah, that's,
Tell them about our process.
Yeah, it's a very involved process in terms of tracking students. Because you're right, if a student if a family or a student just disengages from our schools, and it can happen for a variety of different reasons. If we have social workers who follow up and do home visits and do calls and all those kinds of things, because that person or that student stays on our rolls until they show up someplace else.
Right.
And so we do have a number of students who will leave and we simply cannot find them. And we have a residency service that we're working with all the time to try to do that. But there are circumstances where we have kids that unless they show up someplace else, they are always deemed to be a dropout for us.
well, I guess, in that regard then, if somebody moves from Cleveland Heights, University Heights to Hawaii,
Right.
now, I mean, if they move somewhere else in the state, I would imagine they're still, because they got the.
Right, that's us.
They're in that system.
don't think
But if
they're
they
out-of-staters.
if they move outside of Ohio, are we still able to track them, or do they disappear, like Kaiser Soze?
You
Still
still
track
have
'em.
to, you
Okay.
still
You
have to track them.
They're still ours.
Okay.
And
There's a code for it.
And some districts have been dinged because they were not accurately reporting data for kids that were lost or not found. They are ours.
Yeah.
So that's
why I
why
said they have a
we
number
have
that's
to-
attached to
Okay,
them.
so as
Oh,
long as
yes.
they're in the continental, or
Right.
as long as they're in the United
Continental
States
US.
and territories, they're in that number
Right.
then.
But
They move to
it-
Canada, then we lose.
Right, but Eric, also when I go back to this extension program, those are some students that are not they've kind of lost track of their cohort.
Okay.
So we're trying to go back, and if we graduate those students,
Right.
we still, that increases our graduation rate because those students, maybe 10, and that we have 50 students we know right now are not in their graduating cohort. Many of them some should have graduated this past year, some, this upcoming year, but we're working diligently to make sure that those kids are graduating or catching up with their cohort. So it may be in year 5.
Right.
But as long as we graduate those kids,
We get those points.
we get those points, and that increases our graduation
Well,
rate.
that actually, so on the one hand, my sort of, shall we say, hope was, okay, they fell off the radar, so they really didn't drop out. I can't really think that because they're in the system. But the flip side would be then, is if you left our system, went to another school district, and then you dropped off their radar scope, it still counts on us, correct?
Well, no, if you go, once you enroll into another district,
Oh, then you're
Oh,
off
yeah,
our.
then you're off our
Okay,
Correct,
okay.
yeah.
So that undermines my other, okay, never mind.
Yeah,
I was trying to come up with a way to look at the number.
But I just want to add something real quick, because I think it happens easily with the report card piece and the number thing. I mean, we're talking about kids, and so one of the things that we found when we started the extension program, and think of it as the third part of options, okay? Those were kids who, in many ways, they're fantastic kids, but they are 18 years old, and they have 3 credits or 4 credits because of a lot of different life circumstances. What they have now, and they're working hard, and they're engaged in the process, and we're learning from them, that's a different student than the 14-year-old, who's entering 9th grade for the first time. And so what they're feeling is an opportunity to do something that they thought they lost, which was graduate. And we have a good staff there. They're working hard. Families were very responsive. The students have been very responsive. We're growing it as we go. But that's the kind of thing that may not, that would be captured kind of maybe in your 5th year number, But and some of those kids may be even beyond that. But the fact is, that's a Heights diploma. They stayed in it. They stayed true, and they're working their way through the process. So it's a very hopeful program that is enrolled.
Well, that goes to, I think Cal mentioned it after, that's why the the stories and speeches at summer school graduation.
Right.
Which it's not really, typically it's not kids who are graduating early, it's more kids who are graduating a half semester behind is really why they're so poignant, because it is kids who, hey, instead of just giving up, they're gonna push forward to it.
Correct.
And then I, you know, Cal gets to be the empathetic one, and I'm usually the numbers guy. And the reason, and again, because to a degree, when the board is out there selling the district, the more we understand the numbers and we can explain it,
Right.
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 that's really our role. So that's why I keep pressing these questions, is that, because we're the ones who are supposed to make
Correct.
sure you have the resources that you need.
Right.
So that's why it's a tad, at least Cal gets to be the empathetic one, I get to be the numbers guy, but I mean, well, yeah, that's well, it's for the viewers at home.
One more time, Eric.
But no, but, because I want, if I'm out here talking to
That wasn't
folks-
very empathetic.
You gotta throw that out there.
But no, that's why, again, it's more than just a number on a spreadsheet, but the flip side is, for too many people, for the horrible real estate companies and whatever the morning monolith prints out, all people see is that number on the chart. So that's why,
Matters.
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it absolutely matters, and it's a, what Dr. Dixon and the team is doing is creating the urgency around that,
Right.
without losing the core value, which is the student, so.
So let's move into preparing the future college and career readiness, which goes into our mission and moving toward the future here. We are looking at the percentage of our students who are in AP courses and those that are performing at a 3 or higher, which is noted as the college-ready score for AP. And now, Mr. Silverman, this compares Heights to Ohio and global. And as you can see, Heights fares very well compared to Ohio and sometimes globally in the number of students who are getting that college-ready score of 3 or higher. This is AP enrollment tests by grade level. This looks at the number of students who are actually enrolled in our AP courses and the tests that they take at the grade level, the number of exams, and the number that are enrolled in our AP classes. And this gives the enrollment at quarter 4, because we want to look at where they are at the end.
Wait, what? The second
Is the number of tests.
row, grade level grade level enrollment, okay, composition, grade level. And so in the first column, 81 students took the exam out of 119 who took the
Yes.
class.
Took one or more of AP exams.
Okay.
Grade level enrollment is just everybody in that.
Everyone who's in the course. Yes, everyone who's in the course.
So does this tell us then, if there's 25 kids in the class and 20 took the AP exam, does this chart tell us, I hate to say, this sounds terrible, return on investment. If we've got 25 kids in an AP class, do 5 of them take the exam or 20 of them take the exam? Is that reflected on, is there a,
119 in 12th grade are enrolled in the
Okay.
AP course.
gotcha.
And 81 of them took the
Oh,
AP
okay.
exam.
Gotcha.
Took-
So 70, that, what counts, 70%?
So the percentage at the bottom is the total number of AP classes that were taken?
The number at the bottom,
Yeah, what's the denominator for the percentage? The 19%? Is that the total number of AP classes taken?
I think it's the 432. 432.
Yeah.
It's 80, yeah.
It's,
The 432 is the total number of 12th graders, period, whether they're AP
Right.
or not.
Not, right.
And 81 took the exam, so that's 19%.
Out of the 432?
out of the
Right.
432.
but 119 took an AP class.
Correct.
Right.
But they all didn't take the AP.
They all didn't take
Right.
the AP
Right, right,
exam,
right,
though.
okay.
81 of 119.
Yeah. It's not bad, but we can get, yeah.
And this is by ethnicity. The same,
That's really sad.
Yeah.
What do we, I
The
know,
AVID program
Yes.
is really, the AVID, he's not here tonight, but our AVID program is really addressing this and getting more of our students to take more rigorous curriculum and get them prepared. So you have some AVID students that may be taking AP for the AP experience,
And
but
we're
may
also-
not take the actual exam. But exposing students to the rigor is what that AVID program is doing.
and we're also working with counselors to make sure that students are getting into the courses as well.
Yeah. And
No, I just do the, I'm saying what Toya with the.
And then we have our 5-year trends for ACT scores. And if you look at the trends, it's the district versus the state, and how many students are in English, what their scores are for English, math, reading, science, and their composite scores. And what you will see is that the overall score for English is normally a 18, and so our district,
Well, if I'm looking at this correctly, from in the last 4 years, we've increased the number of students by 67 who are taking the test, which may, like, so I'm speculating, we've seen a slight dip by a couple points. So theoretically, by us expanding the pool of kids taking the ACTs, possibly has reduced some of our scores. I would be curious to see what our, like the mean, I assume this is the average, if we had the mean and the mean and the mode, where we are, our scores are hitting. I mean, do we have, because it's just the average. So
but if you look at the end, the composite score, which is most
Okay.
colleges and universities are asking for 18,
Right.
and that's where our students are scoring at the 19 range. The average score in English is usually 22, and in math it's 23.
For us?
No, that's the state,
Oh, okay,
the set score from College Board.
okay.
And this is the percent of AC students who are what they consider college level coursework and are ready. And our numbers are the yellow.
Now, I guess,
And again, we're working with counselors to look at students who are getting into college-level courses, because all of the counselors will be working on what we call success plans. So starting from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, we will look at college courses, career readiness. All of those will be in a success plan for students to help them get on either a college or career-ready plan.
How are they determining readiness for college-level coursework?
And because there are surveys and different things that must go into the actual plan. There's
Yeah,
work that goes in there.
Yeah, it's probably beyond the scope of this meeting, but that's a fascinating,
Actually, the
Measure
counselors are
readiness.
going to be going through training November 3rd on those
yeah,
success
no, and
plans.
again, I mean, I know this isn't, just how someone has made a determination of what encompasses readiness for college-level coursework. I'd be sort of curious to see what, I don't need you to present, I can find it myself, thanks.
and the second one's just interesting to me, college algebra. Don't you, to graduate,
You need more than college algebra, but it's almost a precursor for someone saying that they're going to make it through high school. If you pass your Algebra 1 class, then you're on that college-ready track. So we have some students that are taking algebra in 8th grade.
Right, right, but don't you have to take Algebra 2 to graduate now?
Yes.
Right, so why would they even have college algebra as a, do people take algebra in college?
Take college
Yes.
algebra.
Yes.
Okay,
And, yes.
sorry.
But I think what, I think we have to be reminded that, you know, when you look at our students that are taking these ACT tests, and then the college, you know, board somehow thinks that, okay, this measurement is a
Well, a
prediction, you know, is a
predictor.
good predictor. And I think what we're finding is a number of students that are choosing Tri-C and some other community colleges, because they're finding that when they come to a four-year college, they're not doing well in many of these courses.
Right.
So now our two-year colleges are saying, let's start maybe getting students even in the 11th and 12th grade through College Credit Plus, and give them a early start of some of these rigorous courses. And then your traditional, our high school track is saying, we have to make sure that our general ed courses are more rigorous, and they receive more writing and more critical thinking, and all of those things are happening, I think, in which they kind of, you know, make all these predictions. But they make predictions out of a lot of things. But I think some of the data that College Board has produced has stated that many students that do not do well on the ACT scores, once they get to four-year colleges, they're not doing well in that freshman year, especially in freshman Comp 101 in our college algebras. And that can really, they go all the way back to middle schools. And we talked about that in one of our strategic planning meetings, about how algebra is considered the gatekeeper. And if our students are not doing well in algebra, that can really, if they don't have that foundation, you know, what happens to them when they get in our upper level courses, then they tend to, you know, if you take algebra the first time in the 9th grade and you don't pass, and you're taking it again in the 10th grade, you don't pass, then you finally get your 3 maths,
Right.
and now it's 4 maths.
Right.
You know, it changes. At one point, you could not pass algebra for 2 years and still graduate with your 3 maths. That's no longer the case. And now you need 4 math credits. So our students need to be solid in their math foundational courses as an entering freshman.
What's the, you may not be able to answer this, what's the distance between the second year algebra here in high school and then the college algebra? Or even the distance between college algebra versus the algebra that you take in a 2-year college? And, my sense of it is that they're not the same. I mean, you're taking algebra, but they're not the same, are they? You're the math, you're the math guy.
Math too, but I never.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I don't
What
think we
is
can
al-
answer.
what-
Yeah,
what is
I think
algebra
you probably
two
get
compared to
more-
There must
freshman
be
college
some
algebra?
Yeah.
That's
That's
what
a very
I
good-
was sort of.
yeah.
You probably get an extension on some of the standards that you
Yeah.
normally wouldn't get.
But
I think that's probably about it.
That's a good question, but I don't think it's the same standards.
Algebra in high school, you
It's the
would think
same
that they would do
standards, I
well
just
in
think you
college
probably get
algebra.
more of it.
And that says no.
Yeah.
But I think it's, you know, being less negative than I was before, I apologize, but.
Oh, no, you're
is
fine.
I think from college to college, what's needed is very different.
Yes,
And
I agree.
skills embody far more than simply just, you know, are you able to solve an algebra equation, are you able to write a composition? It's also, do you know how to study? Do you know how to
Yes.
approach your subjects?
Yes.
So I'm glad to hear that that you said there's gonna be training for counselors and
Right.
all.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more involved in it, and as Ron's saying, I mean, you can never come to a distance because it depends on what school you're going to, what freshman
Right.
algebra looks like. There is
But
no- there is no
we're
such
measuring something.
We're measuring something, that's right. And that's my point, I mean, I just can't figure out what it is. Yeah, so, yeah.
Here's the overall ratings for our schools' report cards. And as you can see, the state likes to give a grade for everything. They give a grade for our performance index, the indicators that we met, progress, which is that overall of gifted, our lowest 20% student with disabilities, and our gap closing, plus our graduation. So they give a grade for each area on the report card, and that is by school.
Go back real quick. So I'm looking at the gap closing, and I'm seeing everybody's got less than ideal numbers, and then Canterbury's through the roof. Is it they've got the special sauce, or is it because of how the numbers are, how the state cranks through the numbers? I guess is what I'm.
Well, everybody has the same criteria.
Okay, so it's.
So there's no different criteria
Okay.
for Canterbury. Everybody's got the same criteria. The goal indicator is the same.
Okay, so Canterbury's got an A in progress, an A in gap closing. What's working at Canterbury?
I would say Canterbury students are scoring closer to the AMO target.
Right.
And as a result of it, you don't have those gaps as readily available as you do to some of the other buildings. There's significant gaps in regards to learning, especially at our 4th and 5th grade levels in a lot of buildings. And so a lot of people have emphasized with their ELA/math support to start targeting 4th and 5th grade interventions, especially for reading and math. Because your gap closing, for the most part, is only going to be those two indicators, your reading and math, which are federal. And so we're trying to target those grade levels right now, too, with those interventions, with the ELA/math support at 4th grade and 5th grade. But we still have to put a heavy emphasis on 3rd grade because of that 3rd grade guarantee in regards to our supports. But yeah, Canterbury has it going on right now.
Well, I guess, or is, I guess to a degree, is it, they're from the one set of criteria to the other, they're hitting the zone to a degree as well. I don't want to say they're gaming the system, because you really can't game the system the way it is, but they're hitting, it would seem that they're they're hitting the criteria the right way to get the numbers to look the way ideally we
Got
would
more
want.
kids passing the test.
Right.
Yeah.
They have more kids in across categorical, across subgroups who are passing the test. Whereas you look like at a Roxbury Elementary School and you see an F in gap closing, what you'll see is in some places you have like a 20-point gap between black and white. Whereas in Canterbury, you don't see those gaps at all. The black and white students scoring proportionally pretty much the same.
You would have to see which each school's subgroups are, too.
And it'll be interesting to see longitudinally how this shakes out, because, again, the indicators met is poor, but again, it's which set of,
Well, that's,
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's and I still, circles back to the comment I made about Jeff's comment earlier, which is, what's working for the students? These are all things we need to look at. They're all important indicators.
Right.
But what's working for the students?
Yeah.
The Ohio Department of Education has now come out with new school designations. We've talked about some that we've had before, like continuous improvement, academic watch. Now we have what we call watch schools and focus schools. And Canterbury, as we said, is doing well, so they are a school of promise. Our watch school replaces what was known as alert schools. That's what a watch school is. It's a Title I school that has either a D or F on their AMO and 2 to 3 grade levels behind, and they're receiving funds for special groups like gifted, students with disability, ELL, or economically disadvantaged, and they don't show satisfactory achievement. So that's how a school is deemed as watch. A focus school is a building that receives Title I funding and has larger achievement gaps in students and performance and graduation rate. As you will see, the Heights High is a state watch school because they don't receive Title I funding. That's how it's deemed state watch. And I can tell you that the gap for the high school is with students with disabilities. So now, we've heard the past, we've embraced some of the present, and now where are we going as far as the future is concerned? Again, we have to thank the district and the community and the board for working on the strategic plan because it has really laid the foundation and the roadmap of where we need to go. The two goal areas that the Educational Service Department really focuses in on is goal number 1, which is in regards to student outcomes, expectations, proficiency, and mastery, and also goal 2, the educational approach, equity and empowerment, and opportunities. Those are the two goal areas. It's not that we are not in 3, 4, and 5, but those are really the heart of what happens in educational services. And so what we've kind of done is we've broken this down into two criteria. We looked at it from an academic standpoint and from a climate standpoint because we are currently asking all of our buildings to become more focused around the strategic plan and creating a building level action plan. And the 3 areas that they are focused on are reading, math, and climate. Those are the 3 things that they are focused on for each of the building level action plans. And the district also has a plan that focuses on those 3 things as well. This is part of the Ohio improvement process, revamping to make sure that we have plans that are in place for schools, whether they are a school of promise or their focus or watch. Everyone has a plan and has a roadmap of where they need to go. They are constantly looking at their data, analyzing that to make decisions for their building in those areas, whether it be for intervention, enrichment, looking also at their resources for those plans. And they, with looking at their data, they could actually look at that monthly, and they're able to revise their plans. We look at them from a 90-day standpoint, because you may start out with something saying that you think that you can accomplish it, but it may be something that you really need to refine and refocus, so you have that ability to do that in your building level action plan. Some of the other things that are happening, and the educational service team can chime in if I miss anything. We've talked about working with counselors on creating the success plan for all students, identifying options for students who may be deemed at risk through alternative and online learning. We've talked a lot about that with our options program and some of the programs that we're putting in place, and currently looking at a grant to even pursue more avenues for that so that we can reunite those students who have left our district and can come back and receive their education. Creating a plan to purchase educational materials that are aligned to instruction, curriculum, and assessment. Dr. Reed talked a lot about Super Kid, but we have Ready Gym, we have collections, math expressions, all of those things as well. Creating a professional development plan that outlines the district goals. We have to have a comprehensive plan professional development that we will provide for our staff members in order to not just meet goal number 1, but also meet goal number 4, which is talking about making sure that our staff is highly qualified. Monitor and support the learning process using the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. Reestablish the Curriculum Advisory Committee to start really looking at what we are putting in place in our schools and making sure that we evaluate it to see if it's working. There's no sense of keeping something that's not working for us, and also doing those research-based protocols to look at other districts, whether they be in Ohio or outside Ohio, to see what's working. Acquire a new assessment and data system, which we've already purchased that, which is Illuminate Ed, to allow us to retrieve data broken down in the ways that teachers can readily get it, and any other staff member that needs to get data for their goals. Our 5-year career tech education plan, which Mr. Callender talked a lot about at our last work session, evaluating programs to ensure they're meeting our needs, and principals submitting recurring reports as far as looking at instructional strategies and their climate. That's under goal 1. Did I miss anything?
I think also, with Sue, making sure that the grants, that our grants are aligned to the strategic goals as well. And we're being very focused
Yes.
on making sure that those grants and those dollars are aligned to programs that are working.
Yeah.
And going back and evaluating those programs that are working too. And then think what would happen in technology, what Christy is doing, we're making sure that, you want to speak to that, what you're doing in technology, and how we're making sure that, you want to speak to that?
Sure, we're making sure that the technology is, that we're
Need some
forward.
mic.
Oh, they can't hear you, Chris.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No,
Mr. Meyer, our IT supervisor, and the whole IT team is really doing a nice job looking at the 5-year forecast for what we need in terms of devices. And then on the Ed Services team, we're making sure that the teachers are prepared to use those devices well in the classroom to make sure that they have really a great blended learning environment so that all students are having that ideal combination of face-to-face learning as well as some online component to instruction to engage them, like you were saying, Dr. Dixon, and also to make the learning relevant to them, to prepare them for the careers that they will have, some of which are not even yet invented or have not yet been created. We can't necessarily foresee what those opportunities will be for them, but we know certainly it will involve some aspect of technology.
Good. And then I think, what also, yes, I'm not gonna leave you out, you know, how you are helping with coaching in the buildings, I think that's important, and then we talk
And the
about the
support.
mathematics, the coaching. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, I also think that,
Parents, yeah.
I think the parent component is there, but I also think that each one of us, and kind of the curriculum instruction team has been assigned, or we've picked 2 different buildings, so we're at the TBTs. In general, 3 to 5 days a week. We try to attend their BLTs, so we're at the table, so they have, what?
Say, but, you know, it's not a
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Fill it in, Jen. Edgy work.
Thank you. So at every building, there's teacher-based teams. So all first grade teachers get together. At some buildings, they're doing vertical teams. So at Oxford, K and 1 are together. So I sit with them, and each of one of us sits with different teams. So we form relationships with those teachers and teams. And we also are there to provide suggestions, instructional strategies, and then go in the classrooms and, if necessary, model, give feedback if they want. And then we sit at their building level teams. So it's kind of like one layer up. And now those building level teams are kind of looking over the whole building, that view. And then they report to our district level team, which many people are here.
Math, anything new? You have in math curriculum?
Within the math curriculum, I may go back and answer that other question just a little bit. But one of the things that we're very proud of is that we've adopted a new math curriculum, 6 to 12, called Big Ideas. And what it does is it aligns with our elementary curriculum for math expressions. So from grades K through Algebra 2, we now have an aligned math curriculum. And one of the focuses of math expressions and Big Ideas, K to 8, is to prepare students for algebra, either to take it in 8th grade or 9th grade. For those students who are ready and can master that early, they'll take it in 8th grade. For those students who would just take it normally, they would take it in 9th grade. But the goal is to prepare our kids at a deeper conceptual understanding of mathematics so that when they get to algebra, they are ready to succeed. Now, back in the day, and I'm not going to say how far back, but the traditional path in high school was Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and some 4th-year course to actually prepare students for college calculus. So my guess about the slide with the college algebra is not so much that you're going to take college algebra, but are you ready for algebra so that you can begin to take those college courses like calculus, Calc 1, Calc 2, and other things like that. So you need a level of algebra in which to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, then you're going to go back and take remedial algebra in college, because you cannot take calculus unless you have a foundation of Algebra 1, geometry, and Algebra 2. And I will say that adopting big ideas will definitely give our students that foundation, not only understanding the algorithms, but a deeper conceptual understanding of what it really means. So that's what we're doing in the math department.
Karen?
I'm the program specialist with literacy. So when you think about literacy right now, we're looking at pilots in grades K to 12. So any day that you see me, I'm in a building trying to gain feedback about how those pilots are working. So in grades K2, we are piloting, K1, we are piloting Super Kids. There are 17 classrooms who are piloting either Ready Gen or Reading Street in grades 3 to 5. 6th and 7th grade at Rocks Middle School are piloting a Pearson product called Literature Common Core. Their 8th grade team is piloting collections. At Monticello, the 6th and 7th grade teachers are piloting collections, and 8th grade is piloting Pearson. 9 through 12 are piloting, part of the high school are piloting collections, and the others are continuing to use our previous core adoption, which was McDougall-Littell.
So we're sending kids to collections, is that what you're trying to
We are
tell us?
sending, there are 6 collections options, yes, at each grade.
Under Goal 1, as far as climate is concerned, we are looking at implementing better communication between parents, school, using our automated dialer, monthly newsletters, social media surveys. We are reviewing social services for students and family needing outside support. We are housing the mobile clinics at the elementary campuses. We have those at 2 buildings. We are looking at preparing our emergency preparedness in every building, and as you know, we will have our ALICE drills this week. Providing professional development for our student assistance teams. Providing professional development for positive behavior supports, which is known as PBIS. Piloting CHAMPS in 2 buildings, conscious discipline in 1, and these are all programs for behavioral modifications. And establishing a team of EOS Equity AP, which will include surveys, tabulations, recruitment of targeted students, and implementation and strategies, which will help with some of the things that we saw that are occurring in our AP courses.
So a lot's going on. A lot is going on.
Yep.
So, any other, I know it's time, I know it's some things we.
Only thing I would highlight under Goal 2 would definitely be developing the common scope and sequence with the learning essentials.
Yes, there was something else done this
Giving
summer. Yeah.
teachers and parents a roadmap of what students should know and be able to do based on what grade level they're in. And those are K-12 and in 4 content areas.
Okay. So I know you see that Ed Service has been busy, and they have a lot of work ahead as we get to year 2020, where we're going to see a 90% increase in graduation and all these other goals that we want to make sure are realized. So we wanted to bring to you, here's the data, here's where we are. We're going to some points that we will come back at the next meeting and present to clarify further some of the data points. But we wanted you to get an understanding of where we were presently, but what's more importantly is where we headed and the strategies and the goals that we have in place. And a lot of that comes from making sure that our teachers have the tools that they need. I know you see a lot of pilots, and districts do a lot of pilots because a lot of different companies have a lot of, some different products, and we use those to kind of test, but keeping the accurate data sets to make sure that we're, are these things working and before we make those big investments. And we also know with our new strategic plan, we stated that we have a decision-making criteria that we added.
Right.
So we want to make sure that when we make a decision, if we're going to make these purchases, that we're going to take that decision-making criteria and fill that out and look at it in detail before we make any recommendations to the board. So, any questions for the team or me?
I'll
Yeah.
make my usual comments.
Yeah.
Great. I think, that, we talk about critical thinking skills and that's what we want to instill in our kids. And so I would encourage it to be modeled by our groups, with all those different programs. I think what we've seen in the past, and this isn't just our district, this is just a systemic set of issues. Be sure that you have enough data when you're making choices, because I think sometimes we jump so quickly. I mean, we have initiative, and,
Right.
4 months down the road, it's not working. Well, what kind of sample space did you use to
Yeah,
make that
that's good.
determination? So I'm glad to hear about the
Yeah.
decision tree. I think that's really good. Not tonight, I know, but I'm really, really interested in that success plan that you
Okay,
mentioned
yeah.
for
I will share that with them.
counselors, training them to create success plans. I think I mentioned the last meeting that, we talk about career tech and sort of an entity in and of itself, and I can make a fairly cogent argument that if I want to create a success plan for a student, and I see a student who seems to be, and I'll pick my own field, interested in engineering, well, sure, when I went through school, you took 4 years of math, and you took all the science you could take, and, you got yourself all prepared. But, gosh, there's a couple of courses in career tech that really might help a person who's interested in engineering be much more prepared for college or the bigger world. So, as much as it is a standalone, I'm not downgrading at all. I mean, it's a standalone program, but I think maybe we need to look at how are we integrating our entire curriculum,
Right.
and maybe we become leaders in that. It may not be what the state does, but I actually don't care as much about that.
Right,
I
right.
much more care about what's going to be
Right.
best for the students. And I think your answer about the math might be the right answer, but remember, algebra is such a broad field. Linear algebra is a really college level course. So yeah, you were asking before, so I just, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just
But
throwing
you know
it out
what,
there.
to add to your comments about engineering, even today, we had our first event with our partnership event at the high school. And it was amazing, the number of partners who, and again, thinking strategically, how do we make sure that people who want to partner with us, what are those outcomes that we want? So that we know that they're intentional and purposeful. And we had someone from Cleveland State University, College of Engineering, who has offered to pay for our 2 elementary STEM schools and our middle schools for a visit for an entire day. And that's how it starts. If we expose our kids and let them see the possibilities, and then if they choose to take another pathway, it's not one that's, it's not intimidating or it's not dummied down in any way. This is a pathway that's going to get me closer to my goal and realizing my passions. And we should start making sure the students have those experiences earlier. So for a partner to reach out today, because he went and just talked with the students.
Right.
And the students were sharing their experiences, and then he comes over and says, I want to pay for transportation and the substitute teachers. But you do whatever you can to get our students to the campus. And that's what we need more of it. And I know, I agree, we're going to be leaders in this district because we've made commitments and talked about the things that we value. And I agree, the things that we value may not be the things that are measured by the state or we may get dinged, but we believe in this community that those things are important.
And Mr. Zucker, just to add to what you were saying, the career tech people are also involved in that success plan process. So they're being trained side by side, but with the counselors.
Very good, very good.
And we're also making sure everything is in line with our financial forecast, right, Scott?
Absolutely.
And before I take a motion to adjourn, I want to remind everybody that our November regular meeting will be on Monday because Tuesday is Election Day, so Monday, November 2nd. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes.
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 Yes.